Hello and welcome back to this episode of Coffee and Tea with Justin and Tashina. This is season 2, episode 3.
Crazy.
I'm Justin.
I'm Tashina.
And we have a very special guest on the line, Kyle.
Still here?
Say hi, Kyle.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
I'm still here.
Oh, great. Kyle's not got lost since we last spoke 30 seconds ago. Wonderful. Kyle is a friend of ours who, before we actually jump into the portion of the episode with Kyle on it, you will hear Tashina and I sort of talking a little bit about how we met Kyle and just giving a tiny bit of backstory, not diving too deep in.
We give a whole biography.
Do we?
45 minutes.
I don't remember that.
All about Kyle.
That's so weird.
Yeah, I called his parents.
Wow.
I did all this documentation. I basically wrote a book on Kyle in this process.
I feel honored.
That's incredible.
Yeah. That's what I do in my spare time.
You truly are prolific. We talk about everything.
Yeah.
We talk about Kyle living all over the place. Kyle tells us some stories. We talk about fruits and vegetables, growing them, eating them, which are best, which are the most terrible. What else? We talk about a lot.
It's kind of all over the place, which is fun.
It was super all over the place. Kyle, was there any part of the episode that you want to highlight here in the intro to just really draw people in?
Justin runs astray for a while. We bring him back on path. It was a good journey. We all learned something. We all grew together. It was an adventure.
It sure was. So if you want to be a part of this adventure, please keep listening. But hold on. Before we do that, Kyle, at the beginning of every episode, we mention at least one thing that we're grateful for. So Tashina, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am grateful that I'm totally blanking now. I'm grateful for a lot of things. I'm grateful that people are listening to this and watching this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
me too.
Being a part
Blows
of
my mind.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. I'm totally there with you. I'm going to have my statement of gratitude be about Kyle, because Kyle and I think we've had an interesting relationship and an interesting friendship. And Kyle has called me on a lot of my BS and has helped me grow in a lot of different ways and helped me grow into, I think, a better version of myself. And I'm really grateful for that, because there were definitely times when I was being an a-hole and someone else may have just let me be that way and distance themselves. And rather than doing that, Kyle actually opened up and helped me be a better person. I really appreciate it.
Oh, well, I appreciate that statement, and that definitely overshadows. I was just going to say I appreciate friends like you guys, but you said you put it in such a nicer way. But I'm appreciative for friends and people like you.
Great.
And viewers like
Viewers like you. I mean, to that note about viewers like you, this podcast really is a labor of love for our viewers. And it's arguably funded by our patrons. Yeah. Obviously ourselves. But the point is, we love you for listening and for viewing, and thank you so much for being a part of it. Kyle, this was a serious pleasure. I had a lot of fun with you, so thank you for being on. And if you want to be, absolutely, anytime. If you want to be involved in more conversations between me and Kyle, you can check out our soon-to-be published podcast called Influencer and Attorney, or something along those lines, which is all about the business and legal side of being an influencer, because Kyle is, in fact, an esteemed attorney and also an esteemed human person. So, anyway.
Great plug.
Thank you. Without any further ado, let's jump into the episode. You ready to talk to our special guest?
Yeah, I am. Are you?
I super am.
Applesauce ran away.
Our special guest is Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle is a friend of ours we've known for years. He does not live in the United States anymore.
No.
He lives in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
He is fun.
Mm-hmm.
He showed up. So when I met Kyle originally, it was at a networking thing. Like small business owners would get together and meet up. And while the networking group as a whole ended up not being super great because the intent was not to be a networking group. It was, the intent was not for a bunch of local business owners to get together and meet each other and make these connections in the community. The intention was for the people who started it to find people to join their network marketing business or their MLM, which was great for them.
Mm-hmm.
However, the group sort of lost its appeal pretty quick. There's a lot of other aspects to it that I won't get into. The point is, that's how I met Kyle. He was going there because he's an attorney,
mm-hmm.
and he asked to have a one-on-one meeting, which I, obviously had. And he showed up. It was at a brewery, a local brewery,
mm-hmm.
and he showed up in shorts and Birkenstocks.
It's a good summary of Kyle.
It's a great summary of Kyle. And we became friends.
Mm-hmm.
He shot photos at his wedding, which
mm-hmm.
I was pretty nervous about because photos are not really my thing.
They turned out really good, though.
I'm glad that they did. I'm very glad that they did. That was like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I think actually today or yesterday may have been his 3-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
sometime
so cool.
within the last week.
And their wedding was so cute. They got married in the community garden where they had a garden plot.
Yeah.
Like it was super unconventional, but it was really cute and really, it was perfect for them.
They actually didn't.
They didn't?
Yeah. They got married down the road from the community garden.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We all met at the garden.
And it was like on the shore of the bay with like a bridge in the background.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
I forgot it started and ended at the garden.
Yeah. The pre-party and the reception were in the community garden.
Yeah, which is still really cute. The whole thing is really cute.
Yeah, no, it was adorable.
Yeah.
I think that part of why my photos came out so decent is because the backdrop was the bay behind them.
Yeah. Maybe.
I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure my photos would not have come out as great in another. Yeah, I needed all the help I could get, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Good backgrounds do help.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kyle's an awesome guy.
Kyle's great.
I enjoy him. We spend a lot of time barbecuing with him,
mm-hmm.
hanging out, drinking some beers.
Yep.
He would come drop off produce from his garden all the time.
True. Yeah, he had a giant garden in the back of the house that he was living in, and he would just show up with those 5-gallon paint buckets basically. He would just show up with those just full of vegetables.
Yeah.
Which is for Tashina and I being vegan, it was like the best friend you could have is somebody who just drops off free, fresh produce.
Yeah.
I think all of his stuff was organic too, but I'm not sure.
I think it was. But yeah, he's a super nice guy.
He let me drive a tractor once.
Wait, really? When? Was I there?
No, you weren't.
Okay.
Of course you weren't there. If you were there, I wouldn't have been driving a tractor.
Where was this tractor?
It was in his garden. Had you never been? You'd been to his garden.
I've been to his garden, yeah.
I mean, it was big.
I just never saw a tractor.
Yeah. I think it was, I don't know that he used it all the time. I think it was usable.
Yeah.
And it was there to be used, but I think he just needed to move it out of the way for something else. And so I got to move it a few feet.
Exciting.
He was very much okay, you can do it, but okay, you're done.
That's very Kyle.
Get off the tractor now.
Time's up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty funny. What are you drinking?
I am drinking coffee that you got me. It is the Simple Truth brand. And with soy milk. Yeah.
The organic stuff, right?
Yeah.
Is all stuff from Simple Truth organic? Or no, I don't think it is.
I don't think so. I don't know.
As soon as I asked that question, I thought about the cookies from them that we have in the refrigerator, and I was thinking, there's no way that the cookies are organic.
Yeah,
I mean, there is a way.
There's a way.
Yeah.
But I doubt it.
Yeah, me too.
What are you drinking?
You tell me. You made it.
Black tea, maple syrup, soy milk. I have to sneeze.
Okay. You go ahead and sneeze. I have to say, I grabbed this mug. This is Tashina's mug, but I grabbed it out of the cabinet because, bless you, because it looked like it held so much. Mm-hmm. And I've been getting the feeling these last couple mornings that I have not been getting enough liquid per serving.
Per serving?
Yeah, I need to increase my serving size.
Okay.
And I'm happy about it. I think I was right. And the fact that it bulges out definitely adds at least a few mouthfuls worth.
Yeah, it holds a lot, definitely. I do find it a little awkward to drink out of, though.
Yeah, I could see that. Although I don't find that to be the case, but I can see it. Should we get Kyle on the line?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's give him a call.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me well, or should I switch over to my phone?
We can hear you fine.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It is the afternoon there, right, in Amsterdam?
Yeah, it is. It's let's see what time it is. It is 2:15.
Nice.
Yeah.
What are you up to today?
Just got back from the market, so that was nice. Yeah, did a little walk down, enjoying the cloudy weather that we usually have about this time.
Nice.
Is it always cloudy there, or is it because of the time of year? What's the weather like usually?
Yeah, it's usually always cloudy, but actually, fortunately, for the last couple of days, it's been really nice. So
nice.
It's been enjoyable, and then it's supposed to get up to about 70 this weekend, which will be, much needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do local people there refer to temperatures in Celsius?
Yes, they do. But I switched it because I know we're it seems like your user base is probably mostly stateside, so I was trying to be kind to the audience.
So what is it in Celsius?
20, I think.
Oh.
It's a little under 70.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I do not understand the conversion. It's like 1 point something, right? Like it's not a 1-to-1 conversion.
Yeah, not 1-to-1. Jack's better at it than I am. I kind of just eyeball it, with eye and feel.
You feel ball it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
Is that where you put on some loose-fitting shorts and just walk outside and just see what the weather feels like?
Yeah, you just stick your arm out the window and you're kind of like, it feels 65-ish, a little breezy.
That's not what I meant.
Thanks for bringing that back, Kyle.
Yeah, I think it's a family show, right?
Sure. I mean, our children are here. Applesauce is cuddled up with our shoes. I was just telling Tashina about the time I got to drive your tractor.
Oh, yeah.
For like 5 feet.
Do you think my tractor sexy? Is that where we're going with that one?
I don't really remember what your tractor looked like, but if I'm being honest,
orange.
I think I remember it being kind of old.
No, it was nice. Well, technically it wasn't my tractor either, though. It was my uncle's, but it was a very nice new tractor.
Oh, was it? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not familiar with tractors, and I'm sure it was dirty, which didn't help it look not old.
Kyle hadn't polished it that day.
Yeah, but that's what tractors are for, though, right? And
Yeah,
I'm not sitting around looking nice.
I'm just saying, it's a lot harder to, age a tractor when you're A, completely unfamiliar with what a new tractor is supposed to look like, and B, when it's covered in dust.
It was covered in dust because it was Kyle's sports tractor.
Oh, were you racing it?
Yeah.
Is that why?
Yeah. We do a little drag racing of the tractor.
Could go a whopping, 15 miles an hour?
Oh, I don't even know that fast. That's if you got the NOS boosters on it.
You got all your fruits, and so you start making, vegetable puns and stuff? Like turn up for what?
Oh, gosh.
What's another one?
I don't even know.
Lay down those fat beets.
I've never done that.
I'm going to squash the competition.
Oh, this is terrible.
Oh, man.
These are just all things Kyle said in preparation for his tractor race. That's all I'm saying.
No, I forgot. I have to wash my hair, so I'm gonna let you go with your vegetable puns. I think that's been a nice conversation.
Do you remember when that used to be a thing? Was it in commercials or TV shows where that was like a lame excuse? Oh, I forgot I have to wash my hair. Like, who thought of that? Who was like, yep, that's what we'll use.
Gotta go.
Yeah, right?
His hair's not gonna wash itself.
It takes hours.
I think it was usually for date night, right? Like, hey, let's meet on Friday. And you're like, oh, no, that's the night I wash my hair. So, I only do it once a week, and I can only do it that day. So
well, let me just say,
it doesn't work for me.
as someone whose hair, especially now that we've moved to a drier climate, as someone whose hair is as drastically impacted by the weather as it is, I can relate to not wanting to do things on the day you wash your hair. If you only wash your hair once a week. Just saying. I washed my hair last night and went to... Excuse me. I just burped right into the microphone.
So pleasant.
Sorry about that. It tasted like bananas.
Ew.
That's what I was eating. Anyway, I washed my hair last night and went to bed with it wet, and I woke up and my hair... like, if it's wet, it's like down to my shoulders, onto my shoulders. But now it's like not even really down to my chin because it's so like... That's why I'm wearing... You can't see me, obviously, Kyle, but I'm wearing my hoodie with the hood up. My hair is in these little Annie Orphan curls. It's ridiculous.
There's like 5.
Yeah, but they're really... Yeah, that's the thing. They're not like little and cute. They're like just 5 random giant curls on my head.
Huh.
So... If last night had been date night, it would have been cause for issue.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fair, I guess.
That said, I'm pretty sure it was always BS.
It was always a blonde white woman who I don't think had those issues.
Wow, Tashina coming out with the blonde white woman card.
I'm just saying. Just saying. So, Kyle, tell us some of the differences you've noticed in your travels. You first moved from the U.S. to Copenhagen, Denmark.
Yeah.
And now...
Yeah, that was the first time I moved abroad, though. I lived in Madrid before that as well, though. But yeah.
Oh, right. How long did you live in Madrid, and why were you there? Was it for paella?
6 months. No. It was not for paella, but that became a secondary benefit to being in Madrid, that's for sure.
Gross.
Yeah, no, it was during undergrad. I did a semester abroad, so I think it was a little over 5 months. I lived with a host family and studied in Getafe, which is a city that's a little south of Madrid. Okay. It was nice. Yeah, good time.
Right on.
Yeah, sorry I interrupted you, but I just wanted to make sure, Yeah, it's good. But then I did move to Copenhagen recently, and then now Amsterdam.
What were, how old were you when you were in Madrid?
Oh, I think 20...
College years?
2021? Yeah, it was second or third year. I think it was third year of undergrad.
Okay.
Got it. I have a question. Yeah. What does undergrad mean? Does that just mean before you graduate?
Undergraduate.
Yeah,
Okay.
your first,
Then you graduate, and then as a graduate, you go to your next line of school, which is graduate school. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, I'm figuring this out right now as we're talking about it, but that sounds pretty reasonable to me too.
My entire time growing up, I believed that college was for rich people, and maybe within the last year or two, I told my mom that, and she was like, yeah, of course you thought that, because I thought that too. I didn't think there was any chance you guys could go to college. I didn't think regular people went to college. I was raised and thought that only rich people went to college. And I was like, huh.
Interesting.
No wonder I don't know what undergraduate means.
You were not prepped for it.
I wasn't.
From a young age.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. Great point. That's a great point, because Jack said the same thing. Jack was under the impression that you had to get an associate degree before you got a bachelor's degree. And I was like, no, who told you that? She's like, I don't know. That's just what's common knowledge coming up. And I was like, but it's exposure to the educational system, right? So it totally is a preparatory thing. And some people are let in on the secrets, right? And other people aren't, right?
Yeah.
And then to your point, Justin, about being rich, yeah, you could definitely be rich, or you could take out a ton of debt. So I mean, it just depends on the path you take.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I think that was part of. Yeah, I think that was part of the same equation. But yeah, so did your parents go to college?
Did your parents named Kyle and
Did your
Kyle?
parents go to Kyle?
Yeah, my parents' names are Kyle, and it was a great Kyle.
The greatest Kyle of all the Kyles.
But both my parents ended up going to college. My dad went to college before I was born, and then my mom went to college when we were kids.
What did you?
So I got to see both the like college. So in our house, it was college will take your money whenever you feel like it, giving it to them. So like, college will always be there. You could do it now. You could do it later. They preferred that we would do it after we graduated high school, but they were very much like, it'll be there. But obviously, they were like pushing us in the direction of like, you should probably go to college.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, I think similar here. It wasn't like expected, but it kind of was.
In your family?
Yeah, in my family. Well, because like everyone went to college. So it was like, okay, you should go. My mom was going when we were little.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it was like, basically it was expected that we go. But I knew some of the shortcuts you could take. Like if you go to community college, you don't have to take the SATs. So you could like...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, at least in Oregon, you didn't have to do SATs if you went to community college. So I was like,
I'm just gonna. You're smart enough to not be here.
Yeah, so I was like, I'm just gonna skip that and take some classes instead. And
yeah,
but the system is very frustrating, like the financial aid system, because I paid for college myself. Aside from like my first term at U of O, my grandparents paid for, but I paid for everything else myself.
Which is why you never finished.
Yeah, and then because eventually,
sorry, that sounded like I was making fun of you. That's not what I meant. My joke was
under the breath too.
My joke was that my joke was that college is so crazy expensive so unrealistic. That was my commentary. My commentary was not about.
Well, in the financial aid system, I remember talking to them. And they were like, well, your parents are expected to pay 80% of your tuition. And I was like, but no one's paying for my tuition but me. And I don't have that much money.
Applesauce is trying to get into a bag of potato chips behind you. Thank you.
Anyway, I'll just stop the story.
No, please, go ahead. I'm sorry. She's crinkling this bag right behind you.
I know.
Applesauce.
She's really worked up now.
Well, can you pick her up?
She doesn't like all this college talk. She's like, I don't want to go to college.
I'm not going to college. What a fluffy baby.
I think back to your story though, but I think you're hitting on like it is the whole process. Like they expect you to pay, and then they won't give you money to pay, and you're like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, they were like, well, until you're 24, we account your parents' income into it, and I was like, but they're not paying for my school, and I was like, and 24 is like. Most people have completed their undergrad by then. So I was like, are you serious? And they were like, yeah, it's just how it is. And so...
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I dealt with the same thing. It's terrible. Yeah, and then they make you take out loans that, as you're 18, 19. So it's interesting, right? So it'd be an interesting study to see who are the people who like, and not as like a, who did better type of thing, but who are the type of people that are like, screw this is a racket. Like, I'm not taking out $30,000 like a year to go here. And the people like me who are like, that sounds like a good idea. Like, I'll take out $30,000 a year to go to this school.
Yeah, because you just don't know.
As you both know, I love Gary Vee, and one of the things he jokes about a lot is like how like all the stuff that you get out of college and how like the degree that you get typically isn't what people end up using. It's generally like the relationships and the networking that they've done. And so he's like, why don't you just like take out $60,000 and just travel the world and just meet every business person you can, meet every person who's doing something you think is cool. Like, just go build these relationships and make all these friendships with all these people, because that's all that's going to matter anyway. And you can probably do it for way less money.
Yeah, that's true.
So when you moved to, oh my God, Applesauce. Oh, Applesauce just knocked Tashina's microphone over.
She's spicy today, Applesauce.
Well, Kyle, so Tashina was holding Applesauce in her arms, and then Applesauce tilted her head backward, and so her head was upside down, nuzzling the microphone, and then knocked it over. It was pretty cute, actually. But
sorry.
So, Kyle, what were some of the cultural differences that you had to adjust to in each of the places that you moved to? Because especially with Madrid, you were so much younger than you are now, and like hadn't really quite started life. So I'm really curious what the adjustments were like for you.
Well, first, when does one start life, right? So, we're always on this road.
I think at conception, right? Just kidding. That's a joke. That's a joke. Calm down. That's a joke.
Either way, wherever you define it, my point was you're always on this journey called life. So wherever your starting point is.
Sure.
No one, when I went to Madrid or thereafter, wasn't like a.
Let's call it living on your own. Let's call it that.
Yeah, okay. Let's call it that.
All right.
But there we go. But that's a great distinction because I wasn't living on my own when I went to Madrid, right? So
this
it was
is
a different
typical example of Kyle being a lawyer. although I do the exact same thing.
Misdefining something.
I guess I do appreciate it because.
Here, let me ask this question that opens up a way of talking and then cut down your way of talking.
How dare you?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
glad that the world can see this. Good
job. I actually do like it when you do that because it does make me rethink a lot of things that one might, one being me, might think is a clearly asked question, and then you realize, oh, this question is biased based on my scope of the world and what I know of the person I'm asking it to, and also very broad and not specific, which is just, I don't know, if nothing else, it's interesting to talk with somebody like Kyle, like you, Kyle.
Well, I think what I think you did there, which is interesting. So yes, I 100% agree with what you said, especially the first part with saying it's what you're doing is you're premising the question off of a false premise, right?
Yeah, so totally.
It's putting your own biases onto something. Where
right.
The second part of your statement was better. I think though that's what you should aim for, is opening broad and wide, because then you let the speaker take the road, right? So by putting your own premise and your bias on the first part, you're actually not doing the second part.
Got it.
So if you want to, so technically in like sociology studies and stuff, you want to leave it. You want depending like how you're trying to quantify the study and stuff, obviously, right? But like you want to leave it open to have the person who you're asking the question take it where they want to go, right? Rather than you biasing them with premise, like loaded premise questions. So I was just trying to clear up the premise, man. That's all I was trying to do.
Okay, so
here, let me rephrase your question for you.
No, wait, I have one. Let me try one more time, and then you can jump in.
Yeah.
Okay, you were at a different stage in life.
Is that the end of the question?
Well,
that's it. You're at a different stage.
What I'm saying is you were at a different stage of life when you moved to Madrid versus Denmark versus wherever you live now, Amsterdam.
And what's your question?
And so my question is, what? Well, it's still the same question. It's just
but that's the premise. Yeah. How did I feel about those different stages?
Well, what were the things that, like, culturally that you had to adjust to the most, or that you, even if you didn't have to adjust, just things you thought were interesting, fascinating, because it might have been an easy adjustment, right?
Yeah.
Again, not preloading the premise of this question. What were the things you noticed the most different culturally, and how do you feel like they differed based on your different stage of life?
Yes, that's a fabulous question, Justin. Let me respond to that
we took the scenic route
as I can. So I will premise my statement off of, obviously cultures are completely different, like country to country, city to city, neighborhood to neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm. So my experiences were only like that which I had at that time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Madrid was living that was hard in two different ways. I think one really because living in someone else's house under their rules. I'm a very, as you can tell, for the people who don't know me, other than Justin or Tashina on this, I'm a contrarian sometimes. I like to have my own rules and my own way, and man, that just was really hard because you have to respect. I mean, you're there, you're in their home, right? You can't just do what you want. That's totally disrespectful. So that was really difficult. And so just, like I couldn't even use the refrigerator, right? So
what?
I couldn't even store food or make my own food in the house. Yeah, it was like a really weird, and where I grew up and like with my family, like I would make, like, I was like a task that my sister and I had to do like every couple of days of the week. Like we had to make food for our family, or we could make whatever we want. And people were always coming and going and having food. It was a very like communal social place.
Yeah.
So it was just really different to do that. Like I have a different like way of like living at home. So obviously I didn't spend a lot of time at home when I was there.
Can you? I'm so curious about this. When you say you weren't allowed to use the fridge or store food in there, were they making you food to eat? And they were like, "You're our guest. Don't use this because we're going to feed you." Like, what was? How did you eat?
Yeah, the relationship's not like that. That would be nice, right? So I guess they strive for that, but it's really like we get a fixed sum of money from the school to have you like room and board you. So we're gonna spend like so you were provided with like some type of like breakfast, usually pretty airman European style, like some bun or a little bit of meat, some cheese, and some juice. And then they would give you like then lunch was on you. And then you would come back and dinner. They would usually have like a prepped dinner, and I'm not going to knock that, right? The woman who I lived with was an amazing cook. Dinner was always very nice, traditional Spanish meals. Like she wanted it to like have that be like the experience, and that was like so. Hats off to that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wasn't allowed to like because I'd want to make my own sandwiches sometimes and take it to school, and rather than have to buy lunch every time or whatever. And she got like a new refrigerator, and I think so. This is the other thing too, right? Children live with their parents a really long time in Spain.
Okay.
So there were two guys there. Her sons were there, and when I was there, they were probably one was in their late 20s and one was in their early 30s, I think.
Okay.
So what happened was I think someone got home drunk one night and dinged the fridge. And she like blamed it on me, and basically she had never let anybody like store food in there ever, and she'd been doing it, I don't know, 10, 15 years or whatever. And then she was gonna make like a special dispensation for me. And then when it got dinged, she basically like immediately was like, "Well, I never let anyone before, and now that I allowed you, then you must be the one who did it." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't think that's right though." So that like obviously wasn't great. And then the older brother was just mad because like that like. Basically, for the time that I'm there, like she has to kick him out of his room, and I stay in his room, and the two other brothers have to stay in a room together, and like that's obviously a terribly crappy situation, right? So like, I get the like, but so basically, the whole point of the story is the home dynamic was so like jarring that it wasn't good for anybody. I don't think, right?
Yeah.
So she did it to get a little money on the side, like. And it wasn't nearly as bad as some other people I had, or nor was it nearly as good. Like other people had way different, like homey experiences, went on vacation with their like family,
lifelong friends.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that far, but they definitely were better. They definitely had a better experience.
At least friends at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was more amenable at the time because we literally are like, it was a paycheck for them, right? So that was also a thing to think about. Yeah, so that was weird. To answer your question, that was definitely a very, and like you said, being out of the home and then going back, your original question of like being out of the house and living on your own, but then had done that for college for a couple of years, right? And then having to go back into a situation that was so, I guess like tightly like confining was a really weird experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know your parents super well, but they definitely seem like the kind of people who would have encouraged independence.
Yeah.
Yeah, Northern California hippies, man.
Your parents are so nice.
My mom definitely more is. My dad not so much. But yeah, they definitely believe in like, doing your own thing and being an individual.
Fall down, scrape your knees, learn from it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it answers the first part, man. See, this is the other thing. Like, I got stories for days, man.
Hold on, wait. I want to dive a little deeper into some of what you said. So first of all, I like that you that you mentioned, that culture is different neighborhood to neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Like, it's always so fascinating to me when somebody visits a country for like a week trip and then they're like, this is what Japan is like.
Yeah, so annoying, right?
Yeah. Well, it's just like, really? Because Even I think something that I've noticed from my grandparents being from Mexico is that the food that my grandma makes, so this is interesting. There's a food truck in Napa. It's closed now. But when I had it, I was like, this is the closest in food to my grandma's cooking that I have ever tasted in my life.
Oh, that's great.
Outside of my applesauce is like full on going Tiger King attacking Tashina right now.
Man, pay attention to me.
Yeah, dude, seriously.
No, she wants to chew the power cords, and I won't let her.
Oh, is that what's going on?
Yeah.
So, other than like my immediate family, or not immediate, my aunts and uncles, this food is the closest that I've ever tasted to my grandma's cooking. And then I come to find out that the woman who ran the food truck was from, I don't remember if it was the exact same little town or a neighboring little town.
It's a neighboring.
Yeah. So it just is fascinating because that happened, but I've had, obviously, growing up in Northern California, I've had Mexican food from 1,000 different places, so many different taco
varied.
trucks. Yeah, and it's all so varied. And anyway, so I just like that you touched on...
What state is your grandma from in Mexico?
Michoacan.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I don't know if she was from the same little town as my grandpa, but my grandpa's from La Piedad. So, anyway, interesting. Oh, and here's another thing, right? Like, there's like a series of taco trucks. You may remember having seen them when in your time in Napa, called Tacos Michoacan, and even their stuff, when I had it, tasted nothing like my grandma's cooking. But obviously, it's a big state, right? Like, and I guess that's kind of the point that we're both making here. So I like that you made that distinction because it's interesting to think about. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about is your parents. So you were required to make dinner for your whole family once a week, and you could make whatever you want. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, that wasn't like, it was one of those where, every week it wasn't like a set schedule, right?
Oh,
but like my sister and I were required to like make food for the family and like learn to cook, and usually was like, here's a bunch of ingredients, put it into the crock pot, now you've made dinner.
Oh,
and then make some rice or some potatoes.
Tiny Kyle wasn't like busting open a cookbook that you bought on your weekend stroll.
I mean, you never know with Kyle.
I'm imagining Kyle as like a second grader, still with a beard, just like going to the bookstore on his own, buying a cookbook, bringing it home.
I could see that being
going
real.
Going to an outdoor market, buying all the stuff, putting it in his basket, riding it home.
I'm happy like from a core, I'm like that. That makes me happy. Because had I known how to do it, I probably would have.
Yeah.
I was doing other things. No, but I mean, like sometimes we would cook it, but no, we definitely didn't come up with a recipe ourselves at the time. I don't think we were that advanced cooks.
When did it start? Like, do you remember what age it began to be expected of you, and then how long it lasted?
Yeah. No, I mean, it was. I mean, like, so here's a story about, basically it was like when we were able to reach the wash machine, we were expected to like do our own clothes, right? So my parents were like, hey, yeah, once you're literally physically able to do this, like once you can hold the knife and start chopping things, like you can start cooking things.
Yeah.
So it was like my parents were, I think that was kind of going back to like just where individualistic and stuff. My parents definitely always had the philosophy, and they said they used to like get into arguments with other people's parents at times because they were like, no, they're just little people. They're not like kids and adults. Kids and adults aren't different. They're just younger and less experienced, right? So like they always treated us like we were like a person, not like adult or kid. Like, so they were basically like, if we wanted to start chopping things, they'd give us a knife, that's probably more dull than the rest, and be like, all right, start chopping some stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it was one of those where like you're expected to help be part of the family, and we cook for you, you can cook for us, type of thing, right? And you're gonna have to do it when you're older, so you might as well learn now. So and cooking was always very like communal, and both like in my house and my grandparents' houses, and everyone always liked to get into the kitchen and cook together. So it was never like, sometimes obviously like I'd have to come home from doing something that I wanted to be doing because I had to make dinner that night, but like it wasn't like we were forced really to do it. It was kind of we were expected and we enjoyed doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So here's a question for you, because you brought up your parents sometimes maybe not agreeing with other parenting styles, or I'm sure vice versa sometimes. Like, my mom will wholeheartedly argue that a kid cannot do something with no other reason other than their age. And it's something she and I have gotten into a handful of times, me having nieces and them being her granddaughters. And my argument being, but if a different 4-year-old can do it, then it can't be age. Age cannot be the factor. If a human being of that age has done it, then age can't be the factor.
Yeah, it's not about age.
And granted,
well, it could be a factor. It doesn't have to be. It
can't be the factor, is what I mean.
It can be a cause. Yeah. It's not the cause.
Yeah.
Right. And also, I also want to acknowledge, there's a huge difference between, if you're talking about a 5-year-old, or if you're talking about 2 5-year-olds, and one of them was born on January 1st, and the other one was born on November 22nd, and it's December, and you're discussing where they are developmentally, obviously that 11-month span is going to be massive. Yeah. But I'm curious to know, when you actually moved to Denmark, and now, I'm just going to say when you left the U.S. for good, even though you might come back. Have you noticed that you connect on a different level with other people from other countries because they tend to be raised in a similar fashion? Or is this another neighborhood by neighborhood kind of thing where people are people and differences? Do you know what I mean? Have you seen any similarity in that or not?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, so I want to be mindful of the answer, but I definitely I would tend to agree that people who live abroad, I don't like the term expat, but that's what people call it, right? You're an expatriate, but I don't think that's a good term because
it's got a weird implication.
Yeah, exactly, right? Just because I left the United States, I don't love it any less, right? Yeah. So that's not the reason that I'm not living there.
You left it, but not because you didn't love it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
you loved it and left it.
And nor is it definite too, right? That's a really nice thing too about But so not calling it expats, but people being who are commonly referred to as fitting in that box. I think there's a different. I think not different. So that's hard to write because I get to experience
in your experience, in your personal experience.
But I mean into theirs too, right? It gets into their experience. So of course they're going to be different, right?
Sure,
so people who live abroad and have this experience of having to go through some of the hoops we've had to jump through to get to places that we've even as an EU citizen living in the EU, just to claim residency and stuff. I mean, it could be very complicated. So I mean, just even having the grit to even want to do that, let alone have the ability to get through that. I think it's defining, right? And just like people who grew up in poverty, right? That's a defining experience, right? Or people who,
absolutely.
I mean, any example, right? Not even extremes like that, right? You grew up in, like you said, some neighborhood. So I think inherently people who do this can bond on a different connection because you can kind of reminisce about some of these stories and trials and tribulations. And,
remember
bond on
American flag shorts? Remember those?
No, what's weird though is that we don't meet a lot of Americans.
Well,
there's not a lot. We have a couple American expat friends, but we're Jack and I really prefer to get in with either as many different or as many locals as possible, just because it finds you get a different feel for the country than if you're just hanging out with people who aren't from the country.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And I think my phrasing for the question was a little misleading. What I meant was, have you found that people who are already living in these countries that you've met, if any of them have had children or if you've talked about their childhood, what it's been like for them? Were they raised typically in a more independent way? Because my sister-in-law is from Japan, and my brother has spent some time there and feels as though he's an authority. I'm not saying he is or he isn't, but it's interesting to me to hear my sister-in-law's take on raising children in the U.S. and how it's different from her personal experience. And I'm curious if you've seen that at all.
I totally misunderstood the question. I thought you were talking about my experiences with other people who have lived abroad. Yeah, so kid raising. Yeah, so yeah, that is really interesting too. Yeah, everyone definitely raises kids differently. I mean, that we've noticed. We have friends that have kids in Sweden and Denmark, and friends that are going to be having kids here, but I don't think I know anyone who has a kid in Amsterdam right now.
Okay. So are there any similarities or like differences you've seen in the way that you were raised to how things are happening with your friends around you who had kids in other countries?
Yeah, so experience ridden, right? I mean, like everyone's raised differently, kind of the same, right? Everyone wants their kids to be awesome and do well, and then some people has a different like way of like trying to achieve that.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's hard, and I don't have my own kids, so I don't have a lot of exposure, right? So it's a very limited batch, so it'd be hard to paint with that brush. But I definitely would say there's similarities and commonalities for sure, or differences.
Sure. So, what's your favorite thing about living in? Which was your favorite? If obviously you're choosing to live where you're living now, but do you think you would ever move back to Copenhagen? Because it seemed like you really liked it.
Yeah, I did. Jack and I both did like it there a lot. Yeah, I don't know. Probably not anytime in the near future, especially considering circumstances. It's very limited, like for movement, just like with everything that's going on in the world. But aside from that, like if that wasn't the case, we really like it here where we are in Amsterdam. Just a different like vibe to the city. It's a very like Copenhagen's like the Nordics are really like. This is obviously now I'm painting with a broad stroke, so every place is a little different with that caveat. The Nordics have a very different vibe to them than like a lot of the rest of Europe. And it's we really like the vibe here in Amsterdam a lot.
Nice. What is that vibe? What is it that you like about it?
I know, right? As I said that, I was trying to be like, man, I hope she doesn't ask me to like expand on this thought more.
I mean, you don't have to. That's fine.
Yeah, because I don't want to take the like cloud anyone's impression when they go to a place, because everyone likes things differently, right? So like,
what have you liked about it? Is my question.
Yeah, I like Amsterdam a lot more. It's a little more artistic. It's a little more like grungy. It's not as like it's not as like. There's like it's so hard to describe. Like there's a way. Oh, here we go. Perfect example though, right? So if you just look at the parallel of like, it's good because it's a contrast because you seem to know about Japan, right? The contrast of lifestyle in New York City versus like Tokyo. Those are giant cities, very similar, so different, right? So like Amsterdam to Copenhagen, right? Like Copenhagen is a much more like by the book. Like everyone kind of like knows the rules and follows them. It's a very like. It's a cleaner isn't the nicer word, but it's more like pristine almost, right? Amsterdam has a kind of more like, so I would imagine like if I was drawing parallels, that's like Tokyo, right? Tokyo, I've never been, but like how I imagine it, I guess, right? And then New York is very much more like Amsterdam, right? It's a little more grimy and grungy, and people like they're both obviously bike friendly and environmentally friendly, and they're great places, but they just have like a different like vibe to them.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I don't know. I'm painting with quite broad strokes, obviously, to try to describe two very like idyllic cities. So there's pros and cons of both, but I kind of like the art scene here is cooler. It definitely doesn't feel as I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's not as like I don't know. I'm at a loss for the word that I want.
That's okay.
It's different. How's that?
Different? Is that what you said?
Yeah, different.
That's fair.
That's fair. Yep. So, what else do you have going on today?
I'm happy you brought up that the Mexican food thing, because as someone who grew up, or not grew up, but as someone who in Mexico, but you grew up eating probably your grandma's Mexican food, and did you ever go to Mexico and visit and you have like other people's cuisines? I'm sure. No. Okay, that assumption. So I would assume you've ate plenty of Mexican food in your day. But so I just made the other day. I was going to see if you guys have heard of this. So I made a bunch of like pinto beans, Mexican style.
I have heard of those.
Yeah, have you had those? And you've made them before in like a large quantity?
Yeah.
Just
not
once
from a
or
can,
twice.
Right? Dried beans.
How dare you even ask me that question?
Yeah. Well, hey man, I don't want to assume. So
you know what they say about assumptions.
you know how there's a lot of extra stock sometimes left over that the bean cooked in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you do with that?
It depends on how I'm feeling, but I generally will just cook it down and let it get thick.
Yeah, thicker.
Yeah, it's honestly, in the years that I've been making beans, I switch it up so much. Like every single time I make them, it's pretty rare now that I make them the exact same way as the time before.
I always worry about when I'm going to reduce the sauce. I always worry about overcooking the bean. It's just a thing of mine, I guess. So what I just started doing recently, because I used to do that as well, right? I would just cook it off and let it reduce, and then but sometimes the beans just start falling apart. What I'll do though now, or what I just started doing was straining the juice, and then like stewing stuff in it, right? So I just stewed some chicken. I know you guys don't eat meat, but you could stew vegetables in it, and then you can still reduce it. And the sauce as like a base starter, and then obviously adding stuff to it, but as like a base start sauce for like something else, it's super good. Anyways, that was a recommendation. If you guys haven't tried that, I think it's pretty tasty.
Yeah, that's genius. And it's
I don't know why I never thought about it before.
Me either.
Yeah, I can see that being good for like a vegetable stew with like dumplings or something.
Yeah,
absolutely. It'd be like that
would
thicker.
Be delicious.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you brought that up because I've been. Do you know what aquafaba is?
I've heard of it. I feel like is that side cooking for the hummus that you rest in?
I don't know.
Have you soak hummus? Have you soak like garbanzo beans?
Yes, exactly. Or or from the can. And people use it to make a bunch of. What do they use it for?
People use it as like an egg substitute and things because it gets like light and fluffy like egg whites do.
Yeah.
So people will use it in like meringues. They'll use it in anything where you need that rising and binding capability.
Yeah, and so
I'm so happy you said that real quick. Though. I have a buddy in Copenhagen who makes the best pastries with that. But
really?
Oh, wow. Dang,
yeah,
that's awesome. So Tashina's been talking about it as of late, and so has one of our friends. And so I've just been thinking, like, man, this bean water is, I mean, it's basically the same thing. It's that same sort of, like, thickness, like, I wouldn't say oily, but it's almost it's
starchy.
Yeah. And I've just been thinking, like, what other things could this be being used for? Because like you said, you cook it off, and, I mean, it's serving a purpose as you're cooking it off, but honestly, like, to take a bunch of that out, you could speed up the cooking down process, and then to have something to use it for is genius. So I'm a little bit sad because I just made beans.
Yeah, you did.
And I cooked them for like 2 days, like just slowly.
Should've called me first.
Yeah.
Hey, Kyle, I'm making beans.
Mistake number one.
You got any new tricks up your Birkenstocks?
Well, now next time call Kyle, and he'll be like, actually, I just recently wrote a full book on bean tips.
I call it Kyle's Beanatorium.
Yep.
Kyle's Beanology.
Yeah. Beanology by Kyle. Yep.
Beanology by Kyle.
Hello, I'm Kyle. I'm a beanologist from Amsterdam.
But yeah, so to your point though, back to the what's it called with the garbanzo beans?
Aquafaba?
Yeah, I think that would also be a great substitute for soups too, Tashina. I think that would be another good starter.
Yeah, I think so too. I put a lot of times in soups. I'll do if we don't have cooked beans, I'll put in like a couple cans of beans, and I'll always leave the liquid in there because it helps thicken it up.
So what's your thoughts on kidney bean liquid though? Not my favorite.
I don't know that I've had much experience with kidney bean liquid, but I can kind of get where you're going because the flavor of kidney beans, I feel like, is more acquired.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a pinto bean. I think so. I think it has a more distinct flavor than a lot of beans. A lot of beans kind of just take on whatever flavor is around them.
Yeah.
Agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, there are differences
I get
on the
your
flavor.
point about kidney beans for sure. Yeah,
but kidney beans and like lima beans, things like that, they have more distinct flavors on their own.
Yeah, limas are rough.
Yeah, they can be for sure. For sure. Sometimes they're good, but
yeah, I'd have to see. I'd need you to point out a good lima bean to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough.
What are horse beans?
Horse beans?
I don't know.
So
I think they're fava beans.
I think so too. So I grew up eating what we always referred to as horse beans. My grandpa would grow them, and they're like these giant beans. So
I used to grow favas too. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me if I'm describing this then. They're pretty thick around. They're maybe 6 to 8 inches, sometimes
the pod,
longer.
Not the bean.
The pod, right?
Yeah, and the pod, and they go vertically. They're on like long pods.
Yeah, and then you open that up, and then there's like a real thick skin around the bean. Like you open the pod, and then the bean itself.
Yeah, there's a shell. There's like a shell.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then I think you soak it, crack that open, and dry it, or you can just cook it right there too.
So
or eat it, I think, right there.
In my family, the way that I always grew up eating them is barbecued. So they just take the whole pod. Mm-hmm. They don't put anything on it, no oil, no nothing, and they just throw it on the grill and let the outside of the pot. My mouth is watering so much right now that it's hard to talk.
Me too, kind of.
Dude. And then they just basically roast them, like flame broil them, I guess.
I'm sure it steams them too with the liquid that's in the pod.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, right?
So
and get a little smoke flavor in there?
Exactly. So by the end of it, the whole pot is basically charred black, and then you can just pop these beans out and peel the thing, and sometimes you sprinkle a little salt on there, and oh man, I mean, they in the summer, my grandpa would just piles and piles and piles of these, and you're burning your mouth because you're eating them right off the grill. And
yeah,
and
I've never heard of that.
Oh man, trust me, you're gonna, as soon as this whole social distancing stuff is gone, which hopefully it will be while the weather's still nice, you should get your hands on some fava beans in their pods and roast them up.
I used to grow them in Southern California, and I honestly didn't even know what to do with them then, and it was always the joke from Silence of the Lambs, right? You have a little Chianti and some fava beans, and I was like, I mean, they're fun. They're easy to grow. They're fun. That sounds delicious.
Yeah. So good. So good.
Yeah.
And I think too, going back to being a kid, when the only thing I remember from being a kid about fava, or again, horse beans, was just that everybody was stoked. You're eating so many of them until you just can't anymore. All
right, I need to grow some fava beans then.
Yeah.
So we eat them out here now. Our Swedish friends taught us, basically they use this type of it's a raki bread. You open it up, you get it a little warm, you rub some garlic, a little bit of lemon on it, and then you put fava beans on that and just eat it like that.
Huh.
Oh man, they're so good.
And the beans have been steamed, or how are the beans?
Yeah, so these ones come pre-cooked. These are canned, we are cooking them ourselves. Yeah, they come pre-cooked with I think they must be boiled, and then they have seasoning and some peppers or garlic stuff on them already.
That sounds super good.
And you're putting the whole beans on, or you're chopping it up and making a tapenade?
Whole bean. But there's different sizes, because the ones you're thinking of, I know I think I'm thinking of the ones that you are there's giant ones, and then there's also ones that are bite-sizable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but there are ginormous ones as well.
Yeah, the ones I'm thinking of are maybe a quarter, side to side.
Yeah, like the size of your thumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bigger. Well, yeah. Somewhere around there. Yeah.
It ranges, a little smaller, a little bigger.
Yeah. So good. Now that's all I want right now.
I like that you guys have talked about beans now for 15 minutes.
You can't beat a good bean.
We've discovered Kyle's other passion in life.
Hey, I got lots of passions, Tashina. You know.
That's true. I do know this.
We could chat for hours about random things.
Yeah. If you didn't already know that beans was one of Kyle's passions, that's your fault.
I mean, I knew vegetables were. I didn't know how deep his love of varietals of beans went, I should say.
What are your top 3, top 5 fruits, vegetables, and or legumes, or whatever they're classified as?
Are you asking for top 5 of each, or are you asking for 5 overarching?
5 overarching.
Oh, man.
Thank you for clarifying, right? Because that was another mismanaged question there.
How dare you?
Oh man, I couldn't even start. Honestly, I wouldn't even. There's so much that if I even started making the order, I'd forget. I would feel bad about missing somebody that I love. Tomatoes, I think. Tomatoes is always on top 5.
Okay.
That makes sense.
This isn't like a deserted island thing. This, like I'm not saying these are the only things you can eat for the rest of your life. I'm just saying what are some that you love.
Yeah. So tomato, and I'm not talking about like, unfortunate, not to knock the store-bought tomatoes, but I'm talking about like the tomatoes you guys saw me grow. Like the like good sun-grown tomatoes.
Yeah, fresh off the vine, warm from the sun.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I loved eating, like, you go out in the summer and the tomato is like hot from being in the sun, and you eat it like an apple.
Yeah. Wait, I have another
so much sweeter
question, though.
So much sweeter.
Do you mean ones that Kyle likes to consume or that he likes to grow?
Consume.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, tomatoes still. Grow and consume.
Did you know that I had a tomato stand when I was a kid one summer?
No, but that sounds awesome.
It's Kyle's dream.
Did you grow did you grow the tomatoes or did you steal them and then sell them?
I think my dad had grown them, but he had grown so many. And I'm 90% sure it was my idea. Mm-hmm. And then he let me just like have a table, and I think I had a handwritten sign that was like, fresh tomatoes, and he sort of sat on the porch and made sure nobody stole my tomatoes. And people loved them. There was one dude pulled over, and there's I don't remember what the name of the restaurant was, but there's a restaurant downtown, and the guy who owned it would drive this like old, 1940s, 1950s, like restored truck around with the company logo written on it and sort of that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And he pulled over and like bought like a few boxes of them and was like, yeah, I'm going to go use these in my restaurant today. Like, this is so perfect. Yeah. It was a really fun experience for me. Uh-huh.
That's sad that you had to say that your dad sat on the porch to make sure no one stole it, because I never thought about that, but how mean of a person would you have to be to steal a kid tomatoes? I know you mentioned seriously, half not seriously, but seriously though, how bad of a person are you if you steal the kid's lemonade or their money? Right? Like, terrible.
Yeah.
I'm sure part of it too was like, just in case I didn't give someone the proper change or something.
Yeah, or you got kidnapped or something. Like, that's fine. But just stealing some kid's tomatoes, I would be very, very upset with
someone pulls up in their car, pushes Justin over, steals everything.
Knocks over the table,
sets
and then just throws one at him for good measure. Your tomato, kid.
Welcome to the real world.
Don't go to college.
This explains so much about Justin.
Wow.
Terrible. Oh, man. Pineapple's on that list, too. Aside from that, tomato and pineapple so far, that's my list.
I have some some fermented pineapple soda fermenting in the kitchen right now. I'm staring right at it.
What's it called?
It's pineapple soda that I'm making. So
soda.
Yeah, so essentially it's just pineapple chunks with a little added sugar sitting in water to ferment. And then once it ferments enough, it'll get nice and effervescent, and then I'll have a nice little homemade soda.
Yeah.
Does that count as kombucha, or does it not count as kombucha because you didn't use a kombucha starter?
It does not count as kombucha because it's not kombucha. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I do.
But is it like?
I do have kombucha also sitting next to it.
Yep.
Could you throw a starter in that and make like pineapple kombucha?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Probably the way I would do it if I were going to do that is I wouldn't throw a starter in. I would do the pineapple as a second fermentation. So I would ferment my kombucha and then put some pineapple in a bottle or pineapple juice. Mm-hmm. And then I would close off that bottle and let it ferment for a couple days, build up the pressure from the fermentation. And then I would put it in the refrigerator to kind of calm down the bubbles a little bit so it doesn't spray everywhere when I open it. And then it would be a delightful treat. I'm going to do that, actually.
Yeah, you should.
I bought a...
Do you... Sorry, go ahead. No, I was just gonna, you don't put the kombucha directly in because the kombucha doesn't like the high acid, right?
I'm not really sure what the reason would be. I mean, it might work. I just... I think... my lack of patience and resources, I just kind of, I limit my experimenting to what I'm pretty sure will work.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And I could really easily see that being an issue. But honestly, I don't know.
Yeah.
Going with experience. I like it.
I mean, it's worth a go. Like I said, if I had more patience and more resources, then I probably would give it a shot. But at this point, I'm like, anything I have to do to not go to the grocery store, to not leave the house, and to not ruin, not make myself wait longer. That's the name of the game.
Yeah. Okay, so tomato, pineapple. You have 3 more.
Oh man, back to the list.
Yeah, I didn't realize we were jumping back in, but I'm glad.
Pretty much any type of berry. I can't pick one because that would take up my whole list.
Did you know that Tashina's mom worked on the research farm that invented the ulali berry?
Yeah, I think she told us about that. That's awesome.
Oh, well then I have no new information for you.
No, but I think that's great though. I think it's an awesome story. And if you want to tell it again, Tashina, I would love to hear it.
There's not much to tell.
I think I just told the story.
Yeah, you just told the story. My mom did not. She was not involved in it, but it's a hybrid between a Marionberry and a blackberry. So the farm, they created a lot of varietals of vegetables through hybridization and through grafting.
It was the University of...
It was the Oregon State University Agricultural Research Farm.
Oh, right, that one.
Yeah. So it was a pretty fun place for her to work because, I mean, it was hard work. But for us as kids, I mean, everything that they were growing was just for the sake of producing the seeds or seeing, does this work? They weren't so like...
So cool.
Yeah. So we got tons of produce. And so it was fun. Like in the falls, we'd get to go apple picking. And I remember being a kid and like going and you would have apple trees that they were practicing grafting on to see if varietals would blend. And so you could get like 2 or 3 types of apple off one tree. Because it was, so early in the grafting that they hadn't like melded yet, basically. But yeah, it was fun.
I'm sure as a kid to be able and be like, this tree has 3 different apples on it. That's like such a fun experience.
Yeah, and in high school, my brother and I worked there briefly for a summer. It was horrible. We picked beans and
Wait, did
artichokes.
You pass out there one summer?
No, that was at the plant nursery I worked at in the summer. I was working in a greenhouse transplanting, and it was like 95 out, and I'm in a greenhouse.
Yeah.
And it was horrible. No. This was like,
you gotta drink your water.
Yeah, well, I had been, but not enough because I wasn't acclimated to like a hot, humid greenhouse.
True. Yeah.
I just remember sitting there and my supervisor was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I need some fresh air." And I started to walk out and I threw up everywhere and passed out.
Geez.
Oh my God.
Did you follow your own throw up?
No.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh God, that'd be so bad.
Yeah, I was like 15.
Did you hit your head on
something? But it probably smelled so bad in there too after you threw up in the heat.
I know.
I know. Think about
they hosted down.
Everybody else has to work and she just vomits steam for the rest of the day.
It was in the big greenhouse, so I'm sure it dissipated.
It wasn't dirt. It wasn't dirt floors. There was concrete on the floor.
No, there was both, but it was like
they
a
just
6
dug
bay.
A hole and
it was like a 6 bay greenhouse, so I think they just moved to a different area. Yeah, that was like the most embarrassing thing too, especially as like a 15-year-old kid, and you're like, oh my gosh.
The throwing up really takes it to another level. Like, what happened to Tashina? Why wasn't she here? Oh, she puked and then passed out. So I guess she's taking the afternoon off.
Yeah, which I did.
Classic Tashina.
Yeah, typical me. But yeah. Anyway, so berries.
Yeah.
Then what?
Right. Berries.
Keep this right on moving along.
Tashina's holding on to this thread, Kyle. There's no getting out of it. You better start thinking about fruits and vegetables.
I like that this is the one that we're really going back on because we first started with because I wanted to get back more to like how awesome Spain was in living abroad, and I feel like I harped on just a really bad living situation, but the fruit, man, that's where we're sticking.
Let's go back to berries.
Forget about living abroad.
I do have a question,
we want to
though.
know about your food
You
preferences.
said that you couldn't narrow it down, but would you prefer ones that are on the ground, like strawberries, or ones that are on the vine, like raspberries, blackberries?
I'm a viner, blackberries, blueberries, like the Owala berries, raspberries. I got into a little bit when we moved out here to, now I'm blanking on the name. You usually make them into jam.
How do you feel about boysenberries?
Currants. Yeah, currants. Yes, black currant and red currant was so interesting to me.
Yeah.
So, but off the,
would you say it's
vine,
your current favorite?
No, they're not good they're not good fresh.
Really? Nothing? Nothing for current favorite?
No, I'm just going to blow right past that one.
Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say they're not good fresh. I think you have to grow up with them fresh to be into it.
That's right. Because they're so tart, I think is what it is.
I had blueberries right off the bush for the first time in 2019. Yeah. When Tashina and I were in Oregon. What month was that?
That was August.
August. Yeah. And the place we were staying at, they had just bushes of blueberries in the backyard. And it wasn't like they had a farm in the backyard. It was like how...
It was a normal garden.
Yeah, it was like... But it wasn't part of the garden. It was lined. Yeah. It was like if you had... Well, I'm trying to explain for people who weren't there. I know you remember.
I could see it in my head.
Yeah,
I know, I get it. You know, like how you might have rose bushes lining the fence, lining your fence line. But it was just blueberry bushes.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's how berries are generally, I mean, at least how I've seen on like little like quaint farms. It's like a blackberry, a raspberry, or blueberry, kind of like that to provide like a natural barrier.
I guess to me it was surprising because of the way that they grew. Like, you have a viney thing on your fence and it covers it almost in a similar way that you might think that like a ivy would cover something.
Yeah, like if it's like blackberry.
But these were just bushes.
They're bushes, yeah.
Like bushes of blueberries. Those bananas. It blueberried my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where were we? Oh yeah, currants.
Yeah. Currants are also bushes. My grandparents grew those.
So do they look similar in their growth or?
They're similar, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can train, I don't know how, I've never grown blueberries, at least the currants that I helped grow in Denmark, you can like train them to like almost like trellis up things.
Okay.
Not like a full vine, but I mean, of course you can train any plant kind of to go like that, but they seem to like that, like trellising a little bit.
Interesting.
Yeah. My granddad would do like, he had like wire and he would attach them so they would grow. It was giving them a little more structure.
Kyle,
and then they would grow wider. Kind of like when you do it with like apple trees or whatever, They like the support.
I didn't know you did that with apple trees.
You can if you start it when they're younger, and then it encourages them to grow wider, and they tend to stay shorter.
Wow.
Versus just growing up high. I mean, it's not going to work forever because maybe it's different varietals. But you can do that with a lot of fruit trees.
I think now that you say that, because we had fruit trees in our backyard, and we had that to our peaches and plums. I think they like lop it off. You like lop it off at the top to, like you're saying, to grow out so that you can reach the fruit rather than it just going up super high.
Yeah, totally. You're training it.
That makes sense. Huh. Yeah, that makes sense.
Have you seen? I know Tashina's seen them. I don't know if you've seen them in real life. Actually, have you seen head trained grapes? Grapes?
I've not seen them in real life.
I think it's called head trained.
I don't know.
So, like, you know how typically in vineyards, what? Tashina almost spit out her coffee laughing. I have no idea what.
It's like, I was going to make a ridiculous joke.
Please, we're all waiting.
It's when you train grapes.
Justin's been doing it all. You do it.
Yeah, it's when you train grapes to grow in shapes, and that's actually, they take after the ones at Easter Island. So you see entire vineyards where it's grape shaped like the heads at Easter Island. Hey!
Get off the stage.
Hey.
I'd at least listen to the next 2-3 jokes before I get off the stage.
Thank you. I feel like if you took it literally, that's what it implies, and that's what's funny to me.
It is funny. That was funny.
At first, I was like, oh, maybe she's serious. Like, is this a real? I mean, this could be like a Napa thing that I don't know about.
It's a rich Napa thing. They got bored of grapes. They're not fancy enough. How can we make them better? Let's make them into sculptures. Well, what makes sense? Giant heads like Easter Island. All the tourists will love them. That
makes sense.
I could see someone doing that in Napa.
Yeah. So you are, having grown up in Northern California, you're very aware of how vineyards look, right? Where they're right. So for people who haven't seen them or aren't familiar, basically the vine goes up and then it's a T shape, and the vines sort of connect with the plant next to it across these strings. Mm-hmm. These like lines.
But that's not how they want to grow.
No. Mm-hmm. Right. So that, we can obviously go into like why they grow them that way. But what I'm talking about is the way that they more naturally grow, which is like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a short tree. I mean, some of them aren't even that short, but it's kind of like a tree, like a big bush. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool looking when you see them in vineyards where instead of being on all these lines, they're just sitting there by themselves, a few feet away from each other, almost like an orchard or something.
Mm-hmm. It's really, what do you call it? Head trained?
Head trained, I think, is what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, I never heard that. Yeah. How we would see them
less
like
in
the wild. So that still seems like, because we would see them in Northern California, we would go on walks and stuff. They would like scale up trees and stuff, like a straight vine, like ivy would almost.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the thick stalk one though before.
So the ones that I saw, or at least I've seen a handful now, but some of the first ones that I saw were on vines that at this point would be, the youngest ones I think would be 101 years old. And then and then some of them were as old. I think when I went there, they were like 115-year-old. Bagheera is not happy to be held like that right now. He's been really screamy lately,
it's
though.
Because Applesauce came over here and started staring at him, and he's like, "It's a whole thing. They're on a mood today."
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
So the ones that I had seen at that particular farm were like, like you said, obviously grown that way to make them more easy to pick. But I think they're so old that it was basically like a lot of the machinery, and just like, different systems come into play and different systems are created. But yeah, they were kept low. To your point, they weren't allowed to just like grow up something and away from being able to be picked.
Yeah.
It was interesting though, because like the stalks on, like the vine coming out of the ground on some of these was massive, like 8-10 inches in diameter, just like things I'd never, having grown up in Napa my entire life and seen more vineyards than anyone could count, and then to see the same plant effectively in a completely different context was weird. Because I've seen them in vines, like you said too, right? Like neighbors have them just growing over your fences and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's pretty common. But
yeah, now that you say that too, now that I think about it, I definitely think I've like sat on some grapevines like that before too, though. But I just never thought about it like where the source point was.
Yeah.
But now that you say that, like that does kind of make sense.
Yeah. It's super interesting.
Corn. That's my next one, Tashina. I know you're getting that question again.
Oh, Tashina got up to grab a cap, so she took her headphones off. But Kyle says corn. Corn would be his next one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why?
Because you can make corn tortillas out of them. That's literally probably the only reason.
Oh.
Corn's great right off the vine too. Don't get me wrong. Like I love me some fresh warm corn too. Like you don't even like just kind of how you guys are talking about tomatoes. Great, but like a corn tortilla is just so essential.
Yeah. So now are we getting into desert island?
No. No, I can't pick. I can't like be forced to pick.
Well, this is what I'm wondering though. Have you ever? So you've made corn tortillas out of corn?
No, absolutely not, because it's an insane process, and I would never actually make them like that. And I take my hat off to whoever does, because it's crazy. This is the thing that gets me about like a corn tortilla, and then there's something else we were recently talking about, like the labor that goes into thinking about like that, like you soak it and the lye and everything, right? Like I mean, it's just like, man,
it has
really
a different ground based on what you're making. Yeah, dude, for reals.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I love them, but like, wow, the process.
The difference, I agree. Corn is an interesting thing. These cats are really starting to act up. Tashina's gonna jump off and round them up a little bit. Maybe move the. Okay, all right. I'm not really sure what her plan is. Corn is such a versatile thing. I mean, I feel similarly with beans, but corn is just like, man, like you said.
Yeah,
tortillas, tamales, polenta, cornmeal in a different ground for different things.
Yeah.
Corn syrup, if you're really, if we're really counting all the things that corn can be. Alcohol.
Get me with some cornbread.
Cornbread, not a fan of cornbread. But yeah, I mean, I think that's just because I've never really had it in a way that I like it. But, you know what I like? I like it when things are like tossed in corn and then fried.
Yeah.
I made some tacos
like
the other day. Yeah, exactly. I made some tacos the other day where I basically tossed corn starch. I basically tossed it in some cornstarch, some cornmeal, and some flour, and then fried the tofu, and it was just delicious.
Yeah, that sounds very nice.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for being on. It was great chatting with you. Please stay on the line. But thank you for being on. I know Tashina says thank you as well, but she's cat wrangling right now. Dear listeners,
I have to stay on the line because I'll be asked the survey afterwards. Do I have to rate my
exactly.
my satisfaction with the call?
Yeah, we want you to rate your experience because if Tashina and I don't get 5 stars at least, then we're not allowed on the next episode. So one of us has to get cut. That's the other thing is the survey is going to be.
Do I get to choose who gets cut though?
Yeah, it's going to be who would you give the 5 stars to?
Okay.
Yeah. Dear listeners and viewers, thank you so much for being here. Cannot tell you how much we appreciate the support, and we'll see you soon.